people who are able to apply has gone up, but the number of people that are actually going through has basically stood at a standstill. We're no longer now allowed to start your process, and also the renewal process, which used to take approximately 2 years, which used to have to happen every 2 years, now has to happen every 1 year. And that may not sound like a lot, but the bureaucracy of it takes approximately 6 to 8 months of processing. And the fee went up from $586 to I think $603 now, which for a lot of dreamers is actually all of their savings from within a year. I know that when I was a dreamer, the $596 were basically everything that I had. And then I would start over the cycle of saving up for my other 2 years. So it really is the kind of thing that if you don't have the money for it, you're not going to be able to renew. If you didn't have the processing done in time, if you didn't plan ahead 6 to 8 months, you're not going to get renewed. And that's why we have seen such a drastic fall in the number of recipients who actually are eligible. It went from 800,000 originally that actually got passed to approximately 650,000. So we definitely have to look at the restrictions that are being placed, and also keep in mind that because of the restrictions in place now, a lot of dreamers have opted for self-deportation. And I think we're going to see that increase because of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Monse, for that overview and background on what has happened lately on Daca, because I know some of us are familiarized with the term Daca, but we don't know the in and outs of this and how much it has decreased the number of applicants in the past few years, and how, you know, the first-time applicants are not allowed anymore into the program. So now I'd like to move on to introduce our speakers very briefly, so we get a sense of who is with us today. So I'd like to start with Carlos. Can you tell us, you know, who you are, what you do, and what's your relation with Daca or immigration?
Hi, everyone. I'm Carlos Leon. Brief. When you tell a Daca person to be brief, that's the challenge. So I'm currently an lead organizer at Community Coalition. It's a nonprofit in South LA that works with Black and Brown people to end systemic racism in this country. And Daca, I came to this country when I was 9 and been undocumented all the way to 2017 when Daca was approved. I organized with immigrant rights organizations, and I just recently received my residency and citizenship. But yeah, that's my connection with Daca.
Okay, Debbie?
Hi, I'm Debbie Alarcon. I am a DACA recipient, or I was a DACA recipient. I got it when it was first passed when I turned 16. I just hit the mark when it happened. I had it all the way through high school, which helped me study, but it didn't help enough, I guess. So my family and I immigrated to the United States when I was 6.5 years old. And most of the time there, I was actually undocumented. And even with the DACA papers, it was still kind of hard. So now I am actually in Japan. I am studying at Tokyo International University, and I am an international relations major with a focus in United States and Latin America relations. Nice to meet you.
Okay, thank you, Debbie. Hye-yeon.
Hi, everyone. My name is Hye-yeon, and I'm a graduate student at Harvard School of Public Health. I am undocumented, but I do not have DACA, and I research kind of the social determinants of health or social political factors that impact the health status of undocumented immigrants, both with and without DACA.
Good. Monse, would you like to introduce yourself briefly?
Yeah, as previously mentioned, I was a DACA recipient. I got it when I was 19 years old. So it was a little bit late for me to actually be able to use a lot of the benefits that came with it. For example, getting accepted into college and things like that. And I was undocumented for 15 years in the United States previous to that. It's very difficult, I guess, to sum up how this impacted me. But those are the two main things. And then the third important thing is that I was one of the DACA recipients that, because of the difficulties of surviving in the United States, being a DACA recipient, self-deported eventually, in order to hopefully attain a better future elsewhere.
Good, thank you, Monse. And now we would like to move on to a bit of discussion on DACA and the policy itself. And Carlos, I know you were involved in the passing of DACA, and of course you follow a bit what has happened lately on the situation. So could you give us a bit of an insight on, your involvement on the passing of DACA, and a bit of a flavor onto the situation right now? And we know there's a lot at stake in this election, but what do you see as potential outcomes for the future of DACA based on how the election turns out?
So with the passage of DACA, I'm 37. So I was 29 when I was able to get into DACA, it was once you were 30, you couldn't get in. So I was like the late one that just barely made it by a few months to be able to actually get accepted to DACA. A lot of my friends did not. And so when I came to this country, it was being called illegal alien. There was no such thing as undocumented or DACA. I was an 8540 student. That's how I was able to access college. I traveled to different states to get access to a license because none of that was here. There was no California Dream Act. There was no other terms that were created by us. So I came from that group of folks that were fighting to shift the narrative of who we were as undocumented people. And so that led to the first work on DACA, which the original was the actual, the Dream Act, right? It wasn't even DACA. It was like to actually create a pathway to citizenship. And if you all remember during that time, it was this battle between, almost like right now, like between, we're kind of being used as a tool for politicians, very similar to that time where it was like, if you get this president, you'll get this, if you get this one, you'll get that. So that battle between both parties, Democrats and Republicans, was the in-between, which then became the concept of DACA. During this time, we had a Democrat in office. It was President Barack Obama, who there's also a lot of conflicting challenges of how many deportations happened during that time. But the challenge was that as undocumented youth, we were also not going to stay in the shadows. It was the time that the concept of staying in the shadows came out, several books on that. And we were part of the UCLA Labor Center. So we aligned with a lot of workers and realized that undocumented, heightened the conversation of undocumented people are workers too. And so with the conversation of union and labor, that's when we learn more about the law itself. And what can the country do and not do? And what is lip service? And what is it that they say they cannot do unless they get the votes? Or what is it that we can push to get done ASAP and like right now today, because we see it on the books? So that concept with a lot of the youth organizers was brought into the table to really like dissect and strategize. Can we take this conversation to the White House? Can we take this conversation to the president? And it happened, right? So I was a youth following the steps of some amazing lead organizers that are still doing great work today in LA. And you saw a lot of the concept of the dreamer, right? Who is the dreamer? Who is the there's still a lot of conflict with that concept of who is a good immigrant, right? And how much sometimes we have to play that role to kind of take a step in. And sometimes forgetting our parents or loved ones who are fully undocumented. But we do use that was used as a strategy to kind of step in and be accepted by a large majority to humanize ourselves into this world, in this country, that we're not the predators, the bad hombres, the illegals, the aliens. So it was a whole shift on narrative, and visually showcase the cap and gown, which was used for a lot of protests to show that we are the educated ones, we're the good ones, which can also be very problematic, right? And we've learned that now. So that was the initiation of DACA, just a lot of really shifted narrative, a lot of collaborations amongst the young, educated, college-bound students that took a step to, see themselves as the good children that won't harm this country and are working deserving of at least a chance, if not full citizenship, at least a 2-year renewal process. In 2017, once that whole thing happened and Obama was pushed and the White House was pushed, we still did not see any responses. So that's when the whole undocumented and unafraid concept came out too. It was this conversation of how much are we willing to risk during this time, knowing that a lot of them will probably be deported. There will be a lot of loss. There will be a lot of pain. There will be a lot of sacrifice, with the hope that this will be the opening of a long conversation with better things in the future. So we never saw DACA as like the end of it all. We saw it as a path to something better. But that was our generation, that we knew that it was just for a second, for a moment, and we needed to keep strategizing, organizing, finding loopholes, but make it happen. And so we did. A lot of us did. And in 2017, we blocked freeways in LA. By then I had a 1-year-old daughter already, and the only way that I would fix papers was that I had to prove that she would suffer, that she was going to go through turmoil, and I had to get a psychologist to prove that she was going to suffer without me, that she needed me. And I did not feel that was fair. I did not feel that was just. So I decided to stay and fight and block the freeway and scream, we're undocumented and unafraid. LAPD came out, the dogs came out, batons came out, we were holding down the freeway. But at that point, it was like, what are we willing to risk to make sure that we're not afraid anymore, we're not in the shadows, and that there is a pathway to something better. That same morning, while we were doing that, President Barack Obama passed DACA during that moment while we were in the middle of the protest. And so we had a decision. We celebrated, but then we also realized this is not the end. So we kept protesting that same morning while celebrating, because we knew that it was going to be a long, long ride, and this was just the beginning of a longer journey. And so that's the DACA in my experience and how it passed. I didn't apply right away. A lot of us did not apply right away. There was a lot of fear of, like, once your name is on it, and then also using advance parole, which was a way for people to travel to their native country, come back, and continue the path, which was a few of the loopholes that people kept, quiet, because they didn't want anyone to find out. A lot of things were being shut down, and a very few were able to take risks and continue to find a path to their own citizenship in their own way. So that was the journey, and that was the past. I think what I've learned also is that there's a lot of new younger DACA recipients that, without that context, feels like this is the end of it all. And then that very on the ground grassroots organizing, where we knew how to get jobs, we knew how to get a driver's license, we knew how to get a place and a house, was really almost like the Underground Railroad. From where our black folks were able to sustain and support themselves during a very anti-immigrant time. Prop 187, and Pete Wilson was the governor of California, super racist, white supremacist. Literally, when I was in high school, his goal was to get rid of immigrants once they turn 18 and deport them. And so the climate was a lot more anti-immigrant, I would say, during that time. And it was specifically anti-immigrant. Right now, it's turning to anti-anyone and everyone. But during that time, it was very you were on the spot. You were on the hot spot, and you were either came out of the shadows or not. So that was my experience with DACA. I would say that right now, as much as I want to say that it'll be great, it'll be worse, we're on this 50-50. Just because we know that we have a very unstable White House, and that in any 20 or 30 minutes we might get a tweet about something else. That just adds to, I think, to the point of the social health determinants of the PTSD, the trauma, the anxiety, the headaches, the pain, just this ongoing uncertainty that I think is more harming than really understanding that we're just more powerful as just human beings, period, and that this immigrant label has caused so much harm. Definitely choose progressive. Definitely think of anyone that would work on humanizing us is just basic sense. Acculturating versus assimilating. Just think of the values that people express constantly, and that there is a movement to decolorize the country and the world. There is, during a time of social justice, upheaval of Black Lives Matter, there is a whole movement of anti-Blackness, right? And so within that, where the immigrant community falls into, and that there are Black immigrants too, and where are those voices as well? So we are seeing a direct attack on immigrants, on minorities, on Black folks. So this is a moment to look at the intersections too. That's what we're looking forward to not have a movement that it was just DACA or immigrant only, but look at the intersections that we have with the LGBTQ community, with our Black community, and work together to really have a strong stance. That's what I see in the future, to really be able to look beyond the bubbles that we had before, and to go beyond thinking of a dreamer, but thinking of a world that we all can be liberated, immigrant, Black, and look at the intersections of the oppressed folks that we all are, and looking at the similarities. That's what I'm looking forward to, seeing a more united intersectionality in terms of the fight towards what this new immigration reform will look like.
Thank you, Carlos, for taking us in that journey and bringing us to this concept of intersectionality, and that it's not us and them, is all of us together. Emily, would you like to take the next question?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Carlos, for that overview and all that information, and kind of building off of that. Hey Young, I wanted to ask, you said that, you're working on the health side of things, and in that aspect of this, I found a recent study that was in the Journal of Health Economics that looked at the impact of DACA on health insurance, and found that more people had access to health insurance and access to care. And of course, that meant that, they found that more people who had, were using the health insurance, were using healthcare. So it's clear that based on just the stressful situation that you're in, there are mental health implications, but there are also direct physical health related implications. So I was wondering if you could just talk a bit more about these health implications that DACA has for its recipients, and also just for immigrants in general.
Sure. Thanks, Emily, for the question. And thank you, Carlos, for kind of setting the historical context of DACA and organizing in the undocumented community. I do want to clarify that, the ACA, or the Affordable Care Act as is right now, does not really, it explicitly excludes undocumented immigrants from accessing the marketplace and purchasing insurance. Though there are indirect pathways that do allow documented immigrants to have better access to healthcare. And this is through some of the pathways that, for example, Monsi outlined. She stated how, different states have different policies that allow better access to higher education for DACA recipients, for example. Maybe if you have DACA, you might have access to in-state tuition, which allows you to go to college, which mandates school-based health insurance. And that, gives you that period of time where you are insured for the first time in your life. And in addition, because DACA provides a work permit, this is how, majority of documented immigrants and undocumented immigrants access healthcare through a work-based health plan. And so, those are some of the methods. That said, there are some progressive states that have expanded access to Medicaid, regardless of, DACA status. So in California, for example, you have undocumented young adults who are able to access health insurance through the state marketplace up until they're, I believe, 25. And, activists are still fighting to, expand that privilege to undocumented elders. And, I think this just goes to show that we have more at stake in this election as they relate to the health of undocumented immigrants beyond just DACA. DACA, as Carlos mentioned, is not like a fix for everything. It's just a starting point, and there are still many disparities unaddressed by DACA itself. And then kind of moving on to the health impacts of, or the health disparities that you might see between DACA versus non-DACA undocumented folks, it really just relates to kind of, what are the privileges afforded by DACA that affect kind of your lived experiences that over time affect your health. One example, again, like I said, access to healthcare that, might, for example, improve your health literacy rate, or, your ability to navigate the healthcare system better or advocate for yourself. You might also have driver's license. Having DACA allows you to drive, which might improve your transportation and access to healthcare facilities if you live in a more rural area. And the implications of health and safety regarding DACA and driver's license expand to just beyond undocumented people. Like, wouldn't we all like to live in a society where people are being tested to drive safely on the roads? So there are greater public health implications for that. And then also, as Carlos mentioned, there's something about not, of course, I'm not implying that DACA folks are not exposed to that uncertainty and anxiety, but you are to a certain degree protected from deportation. And so not having that exposure, daily exposure to stress and anxiety and fear of deportation, fear of separation from your family, that just builds up and predisposes you to, I guess, just be more susceptible to other diseases. That's like another mechanism that we often think about when it comes to varying degrees of mental health status within the undocumented community. And there's, different protective factors that we can organize, like increasing social connections and, organizing for policies, more inclusive policies to provide social supports to undocumented people. But this, even considering all of that, we always see disparities between people who have DACA and people who don't have DACA. That's not, just random. I think it really just relates to what it means to live a healthy life. You need that financial security. You need that just kind of like mental stability and feeling of safety and connectedness. And just, ability to, I think, dream of a possible future in this country. And so that's kind of some of the things that I wanted to underscore as it relates to health, and bringing into light kind of what we've learned from this pandemic. We have seen that even within mixed status families, the health impact of DACA extends beyond the individual. It affects the health of families, families who have more family members with DACA who are able to work in economies that are less dangerous, that have workplace benefits, that provide PPE, that provide just greater financial stability for the family. They are less economically and health-wise impacted by COVID. And so we can see that DACA will have great implications for not only undocumented people, but families, including, their citizen children or even their neighbors. COVID is an infectious disease. The health of everybody in the US is not really determined by whether, the privileged few are allowed to be healthy. If you are coexisting with these marginalized populations, like, you bet that your health also depends on them insofar as you continue to interact with them. So that's one of the other things I wanted to mention. In the interest of time, I'll pass it on to the next speaker and question.
Thank you so much. Onelika, would you like to take the next one?
Sure. Debbie, could you tell us a bit more about your personal experience and your experience as a DACA recipient and your hope for the future?
Yes, of course. So like I said, I think when DACA first passed, I think you had to be a minimum of 15 or 16 years old. And that's exactly how old I was. So I remember me and my older brother, we applied, and Carlos said, we were very cautious. It took forever to get my parents to go on board and actually allow us to apply because they were scared. And it was good. It brought change that we wanted. Like we were able to drive. We were able to think about college. So I lived in South Carolina, and like Monty said, each state has different regulations on how they deal with DACA recipients. So in South Carolina, you cannot, even though we are counted as South Carolina residents and we pay state taxes, we are not allowed to count. We do not count as in-state tuition for any in-state tuition, and we do not account for any scholarships that the state might offer. So there was a local community college in the city where I lived, and my brother actually managed to go there, and he graduated with a paramedic degree. And after that, the community college decided that DACA recipients were no longer allowed to apply for any job degrees. So you could only get a associate in arts or associate in sciences. So yeah, so I was that's where I ended up going for a year. After that, South Carolina managed to cut off all of my scholarships that I would have gotten with my grades and my scores for ACTs. So, and I just kept on hitting blocks, I guess you could say. And it was scary in a way, and also in a way DACA gave me a sense of normalcy. So growing up, my parents would never be like, don't tell anybody you're illegal, don't say that you're from Guatemala, that's cool, but if anybody asks if you're legal or not, don't say anything. And I just thought it was normal not to say anything. And I guess there's 3 points in my life where DACA really had a huge impact in my life. And one time it was in middle school. It was when I started to realize the division that there was. And it was when a classmate was telling me that if I didn't have a social security number, I could not be their friend. I was not really their friend to begin with, but that kind of hit me, I guess. So that really hit me. And I started to realize that there is a division that clearly it's not spoken, but it is there. And this was before DACA was passed. And then the second time it hit me the most was when I was applying for colleges and I got denied all my scholarships and financial aid that I would have gotten with my grades. But since I was DACA, I could not get any of them. And the third thing where DACA really hit me the most is when I self-deported. When I self-deported to Japan, I decided to leave because the university I am attending right now gave me a scholarship. It gave me the ability to continue to educate myself. And I realized after hitting all those blocks in my life that I was tired of being in the shadows. I understood why my parents were be quiet, don't talk about it. It's for your good. It's for our. But I was also tired of if I go to an immigrant office, I was not Debbie Alarcon. I was just my alien number. That's what they called me. If they asked me if any school papers or any formal papers asked me, I did not know where my mom or my dad were. I just knew my brother because according to government papers, it was just me and my brother here. And also like if anybody asked, like I had a social security number, but no one actually ever saw my card because on there it says for work purposes only. So it was like, it gave me a normal life, but at the exact same time, it denied me a normal life. And I didn't want anybody to go through this. So I wanted to help fight like Carlos did. Like, it's just like the work that Carlos mentioned that he did, that is very inspirational. And honestly, like it's groundbreaking. And honestly, the work that you did led me to where I am right now. And yeah, I'm across the Pacific Ocean. I'm all the way in Japan right now. But I realized that to help other people, I had to better myself. And even though I might not find out within the United States, I know that I'll just leave temporarily, educate myself, get the foundation I need, get the strength to be able to help other people and go back eventually. My whole family is still in the United States. Some is in my home country, but I am here in Japan by myself studying. And the only thing that is keeping me going is just thinking of all the people that are scared with the whole DACA changes that Monsi mentioned. Like, my own brother is scared of losing his job, and he is a paramedic. Like, the society needs people like that, and the DACA recipients, they're not just normal workers. There's also teachers, they're doctors, they're nurses. Like, society needs these people, and you're denying them. And so, what I hope that I can do is I can go back and I can help people with a better strength, I guess, with a better background, not really a background, but a better, something better to kind of fasten my seatbelt and be like, you're not getting rid of me, because I am still here. I am not on American ground, but I am still very focused on what's going on over there. I'm still very supportive of any DACA movement. And like you guys have mentioned, like, it's not just DACA, it's all immigrants. And honestly, being here in Japan, I've also realized that, like, people do not realize this is going on in the United States. It's not advertised, it's not on the news, it's not anywhere. And so I realized that if change needs to happen, you need international awareness. And to get it, you kind of need to get the right connections in a way. And to start that off, though, like, some change needs to be brought in the United States. Like, there's kids, there's like Carlos said, the younger generation. Like, I am part of the younger generation. I didn't go out to protest. I got it when I was 15, and I didn't really notice. I didn't think it was that big of a deal until I could apply for my driver's license, until I could tell my friends that, yeah, I had a job. I did not think it was that big of a deal. It made me normal. I just never thought I wasn't normal at the exact same time. And these kids, like, the fear that they have right now is probably, like, unsettling. It's completely unsettling. And that just, I guess it's something that kind of pushes me in my education. And it's something that I hope, like, voters realize, that, like, DACA is not just people like me that went to the United States when I was younger. It's also people that have been there their entire lives. People that had to leave, like me and Monsi. Like, it's part of us. And even though I am an ex-DACA recipient, I still count as myself as DACA in a way. Because to me, it's more like a sense of being. It's a sense of strength in a way. Like, only DACA recipients and immigrants know what other DACA recipients and immigrants go through. And to do that, we need to put our voice out there, because other people do not understand the pain we go through every day, the fear that we go through. Like, yeah, I had my driver's license, but doesn't mean I wasn't scared getting in the car. And every single time I saw a police car, I was terrified. I was terrified that if I was in the car with my mom, who was undocumented, or my father, like, I was like, if they stop me, my parents are gone. I may still be here, but my parents are gone. Like, that fear is something that needs to stop. And these people, I count myself, all I know is the United States. I don't remember my home country. So I don't want I don't want kids to grow up in that fear. Every single morning, they say the Pledge of Allegiance. Every single day they go to school, they see the American flag. They don't see their home country flag. They speak Spanish, but they also speak English. If they speak other languages, that's amazing. But these kids, these people, America is set on immigration. It always has been since the beginning. And you can't deny that it's not. You can't deny that all of a sudden immigrants are evil, they're vicious, they're rapists, they're violent. You can't do that. They are human beings. And I just honestly hope that people in the future see that these human beings, they're not that much different. There needs to be a connection, and there needs to be a self-awareness that these people are also like me. We're like each other. We all suffer, but sometimes there's other people's suffering needs to be acknowledged as well. I mean, I think it's about time. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie, so much for sharing your experience and making us aware of what you go through as a DACA recipient or as a undocumented person in the States. Thanks. Emily? you'd like to take the next question.
Yeah, so Monzi, as we just looking at time too, it would be really great if you could, talk to us about, the life of an undocumented immigrant, just kind of walk us through that and what the impact has been on the overall community.
Sure. So I arrived in the United States when I was 9 years old. I had just had my 9th birthday. And I have a little bit of artwork that I want to show you guys. The spider, actually, the one that you're seeing right now, is essentially what I felt as soon as I found out that I was undocumented and that I wasn't allowed to tell anyone, and that you couldn't speak to cops and you couldn't tell your friends about it. It's a pressure that I still feel. I still feel the criminalization. I still feel that my self-existing is wrong, should be criminalized, should be punished. It's not something I think that people who are citizens or have lived documented their entire lives can possibly understand. But that pressure is the kind of pressure that you wake up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat and you heard a noise and you wonder, what if it's an ICE raid? Because they would do ICE raids in where I grew up. Sometimes on your way back from the mall, there'd be an ICE raid. And it would be up to us to find the nearest escape route and to let your community know. We would have these text message threads where we would let each other know, here's a redada, avoid 501. And you'd be 12 years old and your mom would be shaking as she drove you home. And she'd be like, you have to hide under the seat. Remember what I taught you. If they take me, you take your brother and your sister, you run into the woods, you climb up a tree if you can, and you hide your siblings. If they take me, that's fine. You just let them take me, but protect your siblings. That was something that I grew up with. And I also knew that they had dogs. So I always worried, what if they get their dogs on me? What if my friends see me being deported? What if one day ICE is at school? And sometimes there would be rumors that ICE would be going to school, so we would just not show up. So the pressure is one of the things. But there's also the pressure of having no health insurance. I didn't have health insurance the entire time that I was undocumented, which I think it's pretty obvious that after 15 years of having no access to it, I just had to deal with all of the problems that I had on my own with, I guess, teas and whatever medication you can do. If you ever needed a root canal, if you were an older person, we had a Latino doctor who was doing basically underground dental work from his kitchen, and there'd be a line of undocumented people waiting to get their dental work done. And I mean, I'm pretty sure he saved lives by doing this, but he did end up being busted and got his medical license taken away. I think he doesn't do it anymore. So now I don't know where you get your teeth done anymore in South Carolina, but that was the one place we had to go to. Health insurance is another one, but there's also, for example, driving. You don't have access to a driver's license, which if you've ever tried existing without a car, you might understand a little bit of what that's like. It isn't the best. You have no access to, if you need to go to the doctor, if you need to pick up prescriptions, if you want to go to the grocery store, if you live in an area that has very little access to vegetables, which we did because we grew up in a poor neighborhood, you can't drive out to get healthy food. That impacts also your health, how you grow up. It impacts your emotional health. I have, I guess, officially been diagnosed with PTSD from the things that I went through as an immigrant. I've been diagnosed with severe depression, which I'm just living with. And I recognize the signs now in my parents that they too were living with PTSD. They too were living with severe depression, with severe anxiety. And I recognize the signs in my little brother, my little sister, and we just grew up with these things and we just never talked about it because it's easier to let it go unsaid. Lastly, the thing that personally made me self-deport was the detention camps. I talk about ICE very often, And I was never personally in the detention centers, but my mom was when she went back to Mexico when my grandpa had his third heart attack. And she was put in these detention centers for approximately 2 months. After that, she was in a women's shelter. And after that, for a year, she tried coming back to us. And when she came back to us, I can only describe my mom as just the toughest, sternest woman. But she, in my mind, was unbreakable. I have never seen someone so sturdy, so capable, so inspirational in just how many things she'd survived and how many things she'd been through, and none of it broke her, and none of it like seemed to do anything to her. But the detention centers destroyed her. And when my mom came back, she wasn't my mom anymore. She wasn't able to take care of us. She wasn't able to walk for a bit. And when she told us about the torture that she went through, when she told us about the rapes that she went through at the hands of ICE, which is supposed to be a United States organization, that's part of where the PTSD comes in, actually, just hearing my mom tell me about these things. When I heard what had happened to her, I decided that I would become an activist. I was 18. And I decided that I never wanted this to happen to anyone ever again. And I didn't care anymore about what happened to me or what the repercussions could be for me. And so I started being more outspoken. I started going to marches. I started telling people about what was happening. And then the activists around me who were undocumented started being sent to the detention centers. And I realized that because I was an activist, there was the chance that I would also be targeted. And I couldn't do that to my siblings. I felt that if they saw me in the way that my mom was, then I think that would have been it for them. I couldn't do that to them. And so I self-deported so that I could be here and I could get better. Because the pressure of being undocumented was so great that I simply couldn't function anymore, particularly with the racism in South Carolina, which just kept driving it over and over that you are unwelcome, you are a criminal, you are wrong, you are a parasite in this country. It does things to someone, being told that constantly and just having it thrown in your face constantly. So I had to leave, and I'm better now, and I'm still fighting. But I still can't look at the headlines of what's happening. The fact that the children are in cages now, that they're in the detention centers where my mom was destroyed. Now it's children that are being destroyed. I can't handle that. I still wake up sometimes thinking that immigration is knocking on my door. It's not something that people will understand maybe, but I want you guys to know that the criminalization of people is exactly what they want. They want you to believe that an undocumented immigrant is a criminal just by being undocumented, without looking at the economic aspects of why someone is undocumented. Why did someone need to leave their country? People don't leave their countries willingly. This is something that has to be done for survival. And you have to remember that sometimes, like DACA recipients, you don't qualify for it if you have a criminal record. But you have to remember that brown people are criminalized at higher rates than white people on purpose. Because if you can criminalize their existence, you can dehumanize and justify the treatment, the mistreatment, and the injustices that you will do against them. Please, when you see these headlines about undocumented immigrants, I want you to think a little more critically about why there's such a push to criminalize people like me, people like Debbie, people like Carlos, people like Hai. We cannot allow it to continue because, as you all can see, we are people. Don't fall into the propaganda that we are bad. And also remember that the land is stolen. Thank you.
Thank you, Monse, for sharing that. Thank you all for taking the time, sharing your stories, sharing this insight. I think it's really important that we hear these things and reminded with so much going on that this is just an issue that easily falls down the list of things that are on people's minds. And it's really important, and we shouldn't forget that this is going on. I know that some of our speakers do need to leave at 8 o'clock Germany time. I don't even know what time it would be in Japan by now, but I want to make sure that I respect everyone's time. So one thing we really want to make sure that everyone that's participating can take with them is just ways that they can be supportive. What is it that we as Americans abroad can do to help this effort, to help support DACA recipients, to help get immigration reform to happen? Maybe, Hey Young, if we could start with you. I know you have to go soon. If you just want to mention what we can do to help.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, I haven't given this too much thought, but I mean, I think the very least you can do is exercise your right to vote. And I actually am thinking more along, what people can do, because there are similar issues going on outside of the US within the respective countries that you all live in. This issue of, differential rights and privileges by immigration status, the issue of statelessness, this is present even beyond the US. For example, I know in my home country of South Korea, undocumented people have to get permission from, for example, like a school principal to even attend, which is so different from, what I grew up with in the US, where there was a state law that passed allowing me to attend higher education with in-state tuition. And my right to education from K through 12 was already established in law when I had immigrated here. And so I just want you all to know that, these trends and issues exist within the very spaces that you occupy right now. And I think people draw inspiration for, both good and horrible causes globally. And leaders take note of that. And so my only wish is that people be civically engaged, both within and between the countries that you identify as home.
Thank you for that. Carlos, what can you add to this?
So empathy. I mean, sometimes it's just basic things, right? Can people just please empathize? So I would just say really Google empathy and challenge policies. Really push for a humanistic approach to your existence. We're in this earth for a very short period of time. Know that laws and policies are created by human beings for a specific means of profit, and criminalization and capitalizing off of pain is very real. So I would just say to just not react, but do the work. And I would say build community, knock on the doors of your neighbors. You don't have to go out and march, and people have to choose how they can become active. But staying silent during a time that you are seeing even this platform globally and through many means, staying silent is not an option anymore, and you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And the last thing I'll share that there's organizations like Chirla, Carecen, and we'll probably put it in the chat in a minute, I'll put it, or Community Coalition where I'm from. There's so many organizations that are already on the ground, so there's no reason why you might be like, I can't do that, or I don't do that. There's others that do it. Connect with them, support them, and definitely share. I hope that everyone after today does have a conversation with a loved one, with a neighbor, with anybody else. It's about shifting the narrative, speaking our voices, listening to those that are most affected by the situation, and not staying silent. So I hope that if you do hear anyone that forces anyone to speak to speak English because they're in this native country, and see that as like a way to attack a community. If anybody says any xenophobic comments in a line while you're about to go into a restaurant, this is the moment where you speak up for everyone and humanize every single individual around you. And it's a practice because we do live in an individualistic country that forces us to uphold white supremacy and attack each other. So it is the work that needs to be happening on a daily basis to be anti-racist, anti-xenophobic by building community. So hope we do ask and see each other.
Debbie, I don't know if you want to add anything about ways that we can be supportive of this effort.
The only way I can think of, kind of adding to what Carlos and Han said, I would just say start a discussion. Like, nothing will be done if nothing is talked about. This DACA has been kept hushed for so long since it has been implemented. Like, I remember being in my government class in high school and they didn't even know what DACA was. And this was in 2017, like 2018. They still, not many people know what DACA is. And also, like, even if you don't know anybody or you think you don't know anybody who's DACA, you might actually know somebody, because like me and Monty say, no, DACA recipients don't talk about it. Monty and I managed to find out that we were each DACA recipients by accident through a friend that we shared. And just, if you show yourself as a DACA friend, you will be entrusted. And that, like how Monty said with her mom, like DACA recipients, they have a plan. If, like, my family also had a plan in case ICE came. So if you are seen as a DACA ally, like, you will probably have a very open, maybe tough discussion, like some of the stuff that we mentioned here. And you might actually be able to help them in more ways than you realize. It might be offering them money, offering them shelter, offering them food, in so many ways. So if you want to just start a discussion, make yourself known that you're a DACA friend, like, that would be the greatest help for so many. That's it.
Thank you. And last but not least, Monty, do you have anything you want to add?
Vote, obviously. Vote, and then get involved in your local elections and pay attention to the local elections. Please do not vote for white supremacists. I don't think that needs to be said, but I just want to throw it out there. Please vote for the kind of people that are going to support Black and brown people, that are going to support transgender people, that are going to support, like, people who are unemployed right now, because I know that all of us get a bad rap, but literally we're just people. So please don't think that, like, one vote is enough, or like voting once every 20 years is enough. Like, keep voting, keep being involved, keep being informed. And also, if you get the chance, get involved with some grassroots organizations. You will meet some great people. You will meet some supportive people, and you might even learn a lot about yourself, and you might even learn how to heal a little bit from the society that we've grown up in.
Thank you. And thank you again to our panelists. I know there were some questions that unfortunately we didn't get to, but I'm sure we'll do a write-up a bit about this event and also try to provide those answers in the little summary that we'll put on our website. Onedika, I'd like to hand it over to you to take us out.
Sure. Thank you again. And I really hope that you carry on the strength, and thank you for your courage, for sharing your stories, and for sharing your activism with us. As a reminder to everyone in the call, and I assume that a lot of the people in the call already have voted, but if you haven't voted yet, it might still be possible to request your ballot. So visit votefromabroad.org. Once this call ends, just go right away, because deadlines are coming fast. So please make sure you're going to vote. Indeed, Carlos, yes, we need to vote. There's also live one-on-one global voter registration assistance. So if you're struggling with your ballot, because sometimes it's not simple, if you have any questions about it, go right now to the Zoom global assistance taking place right now. I think Emily put this link on the chat. Just join them, ask the questions, they'll help you there. And I hope you enjoyed this event as much as I did. And it's really touching, and it's an issue that is really close to our community. And, we are all part of this. And I like to consider myself as a DACA friend. So thank you again to our speakers. And one last call to please visit democratsabroad.org to donate or to volunteer your time. We welcome first-time volunteers. We might be far away from home, but we make a huge impact, and our vote really counts, and we can make a difference when we vote. And also to remind you that all the organizations that Carlos mentioned and all the ways of supporting DACA recipients that Debbie and Monsi mentioned as well, keep them in mind, and we will do a follow-up email with some of the organizations as well. And we're 13 days away, so last reminder, please vote. And with that, we're going to be ending this call. Thanks again to Debbie, Carlos, Heyun, who I know had to leave, and Monsi, and everyone who took the time to join our event. Thank you, and have a good rest of the day. Good night. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Pleasure.